I'm Josh Cooperman with Convo by Design. Thank you for watching this episode of WestEdge Wednesday. This one is super fun, the great outdoors, reimagining California's love for outdoor living. It's not just California's love. California outdoor living are synonymous, and now the world looks to us for ideas. It's amazing, and it's super fun. This program took place on a stage designed by Julie Beuerlein of JKB Home Design. She did a magnificent job. And the theater at WestEdge this year was presented by Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company for whom we are extremely grateful. Thank you, Pacific Sales. And this panel program was presented by TimberTech. So much fun. Absolutely love this. The Great Outdoors, reimagining California's love for outdoor living. It was moderated by yours truly and features John Feldman of Ecocentrix Landscape Architecture, Sam Toole of the AZEK Company and TimberTech, Erik Peterson of PHX Architecture, Scott Specht of Specht Novak, and Dustin Moore of Strata Landscape Architecture. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy this as much as I enjoyed moderating it. Very cool living room, so I love that. And thank you to TimberTech for presenting this conversation. I am so appreciative. So thank you for doing that. Thank you so much. But the Great Outdoors, reimagining. Look, I grew up in Southern California, love Southern California, and the one thing that I love most is California in general, Southern California in particular. There is this love for outdoor living that not just the rest of the country, but the rest of the world looks to us, looks to the designers here in California to sort of pave the way. And with that comes new ideas, new technologies, new ways of doing things. And so, like Richard said, buckle up, because you're in for a fun ride. This is going to be great. What I would love to do is go this way and around and allow you to introduce yourselves to our guests.
Lovely. My name is John Feldman. I'm the founder and owner of Ecocentrix Landscape Architecture. We're here in 5 minutes away, but luckily, in Santa Monica. And we have a focus on single-family residential outdoor living, and particularly with a penchant towards complex hillsides and maximizing the living space and usable area of those otherwise difficult properties.
Hi, my name is Dustin Moore with Strata Landscape Architecture. We're based in San Francisco. We do work mainly in the Bay Area, but we have a focus in Hawaii, a little bit in Florida, kind of all over the U.S. We primarily do high-end residential. We have a few oddball projects. We're doing a Buddhist temple in San Jose right now, which is a lot of fun. It's funded by one of our best clients. But yeah.
Erik Peterson, PHX Architecture. We're located in Beverly Hills and Scottsdale, Arizona. Two amazing places for outdoor living, and we love to design custom residential that have that both indoor-outdoor relationship, and love collaborating on these spaces with great landscape architects, because we feel that's the outdoor rooms are just as important as the indoor rooms in these environments.
Scott Specht, founded Specht Novak 30 years ago in New York City, and now we're in Austin. Still do a lot of work all over the country and Northeast, and interesting that I'm on this panel because we don't do a whole lot of work in California, so I have an interesting take on all this.
Oh, good. I can't wait to hear. My name's Sam Toole, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at the AZEK Company. So we make TimberTech, composite and PVC decking, as well as trim, siding, pergolas, lots of different products, all made to be used outdoors.
So I'm going to actually, John, I'm going to start with you.
I wish you wouldn't.
Because I know, you know why I'm starting with John? Because I've known John the longest, and I know that he would really appreciate going first and kicking this off.
Yeah, come on, let's do
Right?
this. Yeah.
So John and I don't know if we met before or after the show house in Palm Springs.
Is that a question?
Yeah.
I got this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we met about 12 years ago at an ICAA event at Snyder Diamond, actually.
Oh, gosh, okay.
When you were just getting off the ground and you cornered me, and Serena, my project manager, I said, oh, we'll be done in 5 minutes. An hour later, she's still walking the floors, and we're still going. So,
I wish I had that kind of memory. I really do. So but the Palm Springs project really was interesting for me because I don't know of another state in the country or another country in the world where you have as many climates and microclimates and submicroclimates as we do here. And because of that, the design that you have access to, what you can create, you can really make that real. And in an environment that is as inhospitable at times as Palm Springs is, you have a chance to use different materials. And we were talking the other day about your approach to design, and specifically outdoors. How does the environment, the different environments, the different ecosystems and climates affect the manner in which you design?
well, everything, we could have done the house across the street, and then, a month later, we get the house next door. Everything is an individual study. We take nothing for granted. The codes can change. There's elements. Certainly, the client's wish list and the budgets could have that much disparity between them. But when we're talking about things that are different climates, and we worked with Moya on the next one as well. Those were challenging. Outdoor kitchens in 120-degree summers. Now nobody's probably cooking in 120 degrees. They're cooking at 105 degrees indoors. But everything is an individual study. So the plant palettes were entirely new to us. We knew the style. We knew what we were after. We knew the aesthetic that we were excited to dive into. But from the paving materials to all the environmental factors that would influence otherwise good design could be disastrous. And we know of some of those projects from some LA designers that went out there and designed, and they got their handed to them. It was brutal. Total loss of materials. And we're just we're talking softscape, but even the hardscape materials, and knowing those products and shopping locally and understanding what product comes out of the earth the closest, and those environmental impacts. Those are all really important. I mean, that's really shorting this answer, but I've got brethren here sitting next to me.
Yeah, and Dustin, it's interesting too, because the project that I'm talking to John about was vast. Being in Northern California, Southern California too, in the beach communities, we're limited at times. I mean, sometimes you'll have a multi-million-dollar project on a postage stamp for a lot, and you have to really dig deep to be creative, but you also have an opportunity there. How does that impact your work?
Well, I mean, the different scales, we're going to approach it differently. Like, we do some work in San Francisco where, gardens half the size of this space. And then we also have a 1,000-acre ranch in Sunol. And kind of what you were saying, like, you have to approach every project with, especially materiality, you have to approach it in a different way. Like when we work in San Francisco, we'll use porcelain, we'll use materials that we know they're going to be ultra durable. But once we get down to close to San Jose, Los Gatos, we know that those paving materials are going to get 150 degrees in the sun. So we know better to use those. So at that time, we're using high density limestones that don't capture heat, that are still very durable. And kind of like you're saying with the softscape materials, the Bay Area, there are more microclimates in the Bay Area than almost anywhere in the world. And adjusting your plant palette for what's going to grow in San Francisco, you go 5 miles away and they're going to burn or they're going to get killed by frost. It's a phenomenal difference in those areas.
And Erik, it's interesting because for you, what I wanted to do, and I love this sort of yin and yang where we've got the landscape architects sitting next to the architects who, sometimes there's a little bit of conflict between the indoors and the outdoors. And while it's not necessarily about the conflict, I think the approach is the same. And you two, we've had this conversation, whether you're building in Beverly Hills is different than building in, on a golf course in Phoenix.
Right. So the sun angles and we're like in Scottsdale, we're trying to protect ourselves constantly from the sun. It's really intense, and so we do want to still have that indoor-outdoor relationship, but we have to give big, deep covered overhangs, which removes the landscape further away from the house. So we like to say, well, we want to see that, having that blend with glass going down to the floor and landscape materials. So we just have to look at it in different ways, maybe doing it on the north side of the house, which then affects the type of plant material you could have. But the traditional way in Scottsdale was all the homes were like courtyard homes. So you had a microclimate on the interior of the house that created a cooler area and the plants could grow, and then you'd have all the natural light in. But you'd have a different scenario for California where we don't need all that overhang. You want the sun to come in and warm you up on days like today. And so then you approach things differently. We use darker colors in Arizona because that's more of the material nature, darker stones, darker plant material, and then here we do lighter colors. So it's just using that materiality and doing a house that's made regionally that feels like it belongs in that space, rather than just doing like a white house anywhere. It just doesn't make sense to do things like that in places like Arizona.
Yeah, and Scott, you and I, when you were on the show, we were talking about one of your projects. I find Austin to be very much like California at times, except you've got all of it in a very small period of time. It's very hot, it's very cold. The topography in certain places, like the one house that we were discussing that's overlooking the lake, that I think just has an impossible elevation. But again, creative thinkers find creative ways to do amazing things.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you first mentioned about things are developed in California and provide images that clients all over the country see. So we get all the time people bringing us magazines of houses in California with giant glass walls that slide open, and it's like, we want to live indoor, outdoors, we want to be able to go. And in Austin, there's literally 3 days a year you can do that. But we have, most of our clients are so insistent on it. We put them in, we're like, you're never going to open this, ever. And it's true. So what we try to talk them into is do fixed glass here and do one door that you go in and out, and it'll work for you just fine. You'll get all the ventilation you need. You'll save a lot of money. It's more energy efficient for you. It's hard to get people around that, though. So I blame California for a lot of problems elsewhere. But yeah, it's great. It's doing houses in the Northeast, you run into an inverse problem of a lot of things will grow there that people in the South want, and in Austin, you have like 4 plants that will grow, literally, and you use those same 4 over and over. So we see this mixing of imagery and things from clients, and have to really explain to them and talk to them about what you're looking for and try to find creative ways to use it with the materials that are appropriate for that location.
And a lot of people blame California for a lot of things. It's true. But Sam, so it's funny, right? Because hearing this, you get 4 different perspectives. We're talking about the same thing, but you could hear these 4 different perspectives and think we were talking about 4 different topics.
Right.
How does a company like yours find a way to provide each of these creatives, every creative really, with the types of products and materials that allow them to do things that, to be honest with you, push the boundaries of traditional materials that maybe couldn't stand up performatively to projects like this?
Right. Well, the fact is people want to live outdoors. And if you want to live outdoors, you want to live outdoors in a beautiful way that supports the design integrity, the design vision for your entire house. There are spaces for your family to enjoy. There are places that you're investing in for the long term. And yet, by virtue of the fact that you're outdoors, it's really challenging. It's challenging for plants. It's challenging for materials to stand up, to be low maintenance, to have the longevity that you need, to have the other sort of characteristics that make it suitable for the outdoors. So the AZEK company is all about creating products that replace wood in the outside of the home so that it lasts longer. The wood just doesn't last. It just plain old doesn't in the elements. It rots, it warps, it splinters, it's hard to take care of. It's all these things. So it's thrilling to work with architects of this caliber, right, and understand all their needs. We have teams of material scientists. We have product innovators and designers that all they do is spend time thinking about how to create products that look like wood, that really replicate or that mimic the look of natural hardwoods. I should be talking to you. I'm talking to Josh. In the outside of a home, and this is really challenging to do. It's decades of research and work, and it's a lot of in the details of trying to cater, to your point, what we're doing to the needs of the designers that are using our product, whether that's different colors, different textures, different widths, different characteristics, all that stuff. But ultimately, it's all about creating materials that are suitable and sustainable on the outside of a home.
And it's interesting, too, because I want to juxtapose that against personal story. So I'm a native Angelino. And when I was growing up, I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, and we lived in Chatsworth. And I remember, I think I've told most of you this story, but it was a particular Saturday in, I'm trying to remember the year, it was like in 1983 or 84, and came home from a football game. We had horses, and there was a wildfire that happened so quickly that I was on a horse with another in lead for 23 hours wearing board shorts and cowboy boots. And this is early 1983. That was a complete one-off. That had never happened in the area before. It was unique, it was weird, it was a freak fire. And now we have seasons. It happens all the time. It's not something that is one-off anymore. That being said, people don't want to give up the style, the lifestyle, right? They want to be able to enjoy their outdoors, but they also have to be prepared for so much more than we used to, on a couple of fronts. Climate, disasters, but also outdoor kitchens now mimic indoor kitchens. They're as performative, they're as beautiful. What does that do? And I'm gonna go the other way this time. Scott, I'll start with you. How do those issues, because you have those too in Texas, how does that, as someone who's designing spaces that your clients want to live indoor, outdoor, they want to enjoy them all the time, knowing that you now have to account for these issues, how does that change your thinking about the work?
Yeah, it totally changes about how, when people say they want to live outdoors or an indoor-outdoor lifestyle, what are they really talking about? Do they want to actually be out in that, or is being pulled further back towards the main building, something, and looking out toward a beautiful landscape good enough? And I think getting into the specificity of what that means to live an indoor-outdoor lifestyle, I think is super important. Sometimes it just has to do with the quality and feel of the air. So if you have enough air exchanges in interior of a house and you get a great view, that's enough. So you don't always have to go outside. We've done a number of outdoor kitchens, like you said, in Texas. And you're right, a lot of times they don't get used just because you don't want to be out there under it. So now we try to design them within a space that can be closed and opened when necessary, and things like that. And also, I love your point about wood. There was a trend that ended fairly recently, but for a while there, people were putting like Ipe siding on everything. And 5 years later, it's horrible. They hate it. And
Ipe looks good for like 5 minutes.
It's amazing that there's this resistance in a lot of designers' minds towards what we call synthetic materials, and that is going away quickly. It's because the maintenance issues are too extreme in some natural materials, and I don't really make a distinction between them. If it provides the feel that you're looking for, it doesn't really matter that it's a log cut down or something made. So I really appreciate that there are a lot of new science involved in producing products that are appropriate for where they are.
Awesome. I'm going to hire him after to
Right?
join the marketing team.
Erik, same thing.
Well, I think we've always wanted to be outside, and there just wasn't the product. Like, all exterior furniture looked the same, and it was horribly ugly and uncomfortable. And so now the products have caught up, so you could have exterior-looking exterior products that actually are look like they're interior. And we'll bring up Moya again with her beautiful metal cabinets. So we used to have outdoor barbecue areas, and they were just like built into masonry blocks, and they just weren't nice looking. Now we could do beautiful cabinetry that looks just as good as interior cabinetry, and all of the other appliances. You could do griddles, you could do woks, you could do pizza ovens, and create a whole outdoor environment on furniture that looks spectacular, even carpets. So the outdoor space looks, just as good and is just as comfortable as your indoor.
So I'll start with the fire issues, because that's really big with California. And one of the big things, as the building codes are catching up, like we've always had the requirements to do defensible zones, but most municipalities are finally enforcing it. So we can't go in with trees next to the building, which sucks because we really want to frame the home. Like the new thing with Marin County is they're going to 5 to 10 feet of non-combustibles. So we're basically putting rock around the building, which I know that every client's going to go and plant it right after we get our final. But like with materials, as a firm, we've always been against synthetics. And it's only been the last 5 years that we've really leaned in. And it really started with countertops. So with Decton, which we actually started with Neolith, but we now transitioned to Decton. We just don't have any problems with it. I don't have to go to another meeting to talk about why is my granite stained. And even though I made them sign a disclaimer that says it's going to stain and I don't want to hear about it, but it saves me that. And with TimberTech, our intro to it was we have a project in Woodside. We're putting in like a 5,000 square foot deck. And with the fire codes, we can't use real lumber because of the fire codes. And TimberTech has highest level rating because it will melt and it won't transmit that fire to the house. So we can have this beautiful deck. I also don't have to have a talk about maintenance where the wood is turned silver, which is beautiful. Half our clients hate it, where the TimberTech products stay looking gorgeous.
Ditto.
Perfect.
It's
Thanks,
so
John.
unfair that he had to go after me on
Thanks,
that one.
John. I'll go first with you next time.
Okay. I've been saying this for a long time. I've been practicing for 30 years, and for at least 20, our great interior design brethren and architects have been doing interiors in such a way that they have naturally migrated to the outdoors. There's some conflict there for guys like us. We've seen a lot of our more robust work start to, shrivel up, and we're being called by architecture firms, hey, can you shrub it up for us? And yeah, we're bigger than that. We're very architectural in our approach. But I've been warning our brethren for a long time that the talent on the indoors is coming fast and hard to the outdoors, and we better get savvy really quickly. So it's not every time that we see things that translate well to the outdoors. The look is phenomenal. The materials aren't sustainable. And that's that disparity that we've seen. And that's why we have to all, no matter what discipline we're in, ask a lot of questions. It was back to the desert thing. I didn't know that you had to turn a cactus the same way as it grew up in the nursery, or else it's going to get sunburnt in the last 5 minutes. So these are the things that we all educate on, and we lean on, every one of us, from the installer to the manufacturer. And I love that TimberTech actually is not only responsive and reactionary, but innovative in bringing products that they are creating profiles in engineered products that actually help to solve design problems. What do you do with the edge of that deck? Well, it's finished out. What if you cut through that material? What's the implications of that? Are we getting cupping? What do we do with that? As we were actually getting with newer stock, cut out of non-rainforests of living material. So it's interesting to see this ebb and flow. Synthetic lawns, we've begun to incorporate some, but that's another cautionary tale. We had just in the San Fernando Valley, we had something in Encino where we had such an exposure that it wasn't that hot, but the railing on the second floor had cast a hot enough reflection that it scorched and melted the lawn and the synthetic turf in the rear yard. Nobody could have seen that coming. And they thought that the installer had come over it with a wheelbarrow, and it was about to be this absolute nightmare of a World War III, and somebody took responsibility for it. So,
And I think it wasn't you.
it definitely wasn't us.
But you know what? I want to kind of dive in a little, drill down a little bit on, with you, Sam, on the resistance topic.
Fire resistance.
Because I think it's important. I would imagine that you come across a lot of product resistance from synthetics.
Yeah, well, yes, I do think it's changing. I will tell you that the consumer, we're focused on also educating the consumer because many consumers don't know this is an option for them. They don't know. And they're actually hungry now. We meet with editors of the mainstream home, shelter publications, and they're all saying, people want information. They don't want you to gloss it over. They want to know how a product's made, how it's going to perform, where it's manufactured, what's the history, how did it get invented. There's an appetite for all of that, right? And so learning about the properties of different materials is really important. So when it comes to fire resistance, we, not every single product, but a number of collections in our portfolio, the ones that are made of recycled PVC are Class A flame spread, which means, as you said, it melts. It's not going to be indestructible. It's going to not look good after a fire, but it's going to melt and it's going to prevent the flames from coming into your house. We're also ignition resistant. So that's the top designation, no other product. So that means embers from a fire from the yard or whatever aren't going to catch on. And it's also WUI compliant. There's a staggering number of homes that are in WUI zones today. I want to say it's like 40 million homes or something. It's crazy. There was just a study that came out that said the number of people that have to deal with this is higher than ever, and yet the awareness is lower. People just don't know what their options are. So I think there's a real appetite for that. And as I said before, it's definitely fire, and that's a big topic for us here. But there's other, it's hurricanes that are devastating. It's floods. It's just heat in general. Just the idea of dealing with the contradiction of wanting to live outdoors, wanting this indoor-outdoor life, and having to deal with what that means. When you're trying to make investments in your home, these are not cheap, right? You're investing for the long haul. This is a home that you want to sell someday or pass on to your kids or whatever. You want to make decisions that last, and investments that pay off. So these are all ways that we can do that.
I think it's important to note, too, that there's always, and this is kind of what I wanted to touch on, is the resistance to the product. Mere exposure effect is this idea that we gravitate towards the things that we know and have been exposed to.
Right.
Right? So,
well, synthetics has a bad name, right?
Yeah.
And so that's changing. So when we, early on, when you talk to consumers, they love the idea that they don't have to take care of their deck. They love the idea they don't have to think about it. They love that there's no splinters, but they don't quite believe you that it's going to look good. They still think it's going to look like plastic. It's old school composite. People have heard me tell this story, but I joke. Like I was at a party once because I love our product. I'm very passionate about it, and everyone at the party was like, "Wow, it sounds great! It sounds great!" And I get in the car with a friend of mine to drive home, and she's starting the car, and she looks at me and she's like, "But seriously, how does it look?" Like people don't believe it. They just don't. They can't imagine that you could create something like wood is like people have an emotional connection to wood. I mean, wood is wood. It's like it kind of is the epitome of natural beauty. If you think about it, like there's nothing more beautiful than wood, but that's indoors. Outdoors, wood just doesn't last. It just doesn't. And so, we're really always trying to combat that idea and educate people about synthetics. And it's true with lawns too. That's that industry is a good one. But more and more and more, synthetics are you can get the look that you want, that mimics what you're looking for. And I think a younger audience, a younger homeowner audience, is much more amenable to this than the older. The older audience is great because they've been there, done that with the wood situation, or they've been scarred, or they know what it feels like to sand and stain their deck every 3 years, or like, I'm done with that. But the younger millennial homeowner is definitely more amenable in general to anything that saves them time and money, and as long as it passes the design test.
well, I think specifically too, as it relates to the residential client and the residential projects, you look at what's being done today by some of the greatest architects and designers. And to your point, John, it has to be a little frustrating when interior designers start encroaching into your space a little bit. You're out there. But at the same time, I think maybe aside from kitchens, I can't think of a space in a residential environment that has undergone such a dramatic change from demand, right? We went for decades and decades, California living, back to this idea, right, where you got the big stone expanse and you got the masonry grill where you just drop a grill into it, or you got the Weber on the side and maybe a smoker if you're really happening. But it wasn't the same thing. But now you look at projects where the indoors is sometimes inferior to what's happening outside. But you don't have the same challenges inside as you do outside. And with that, I think that provides an opportunity. John, I'll start with you this time. As far as the balance between materiality, technology, and client demand, it feels like it's all coming together. And does that provide you, because of your base of knowledge with plants, especially how things are changing now between what you can use and what's available, does that give you an opportunity to do more with the space where you're providing kind of that original idea of what your clients want with something that is so performative that you can actually do it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's always a new, I said this earlier, I don't mean to sound like a broken record. Everything's a new investigation. There's so many cool products that we get us, that we're inspired in, and inspire the thought process itself. I mean, we used to say we can have a tree that we build a whole environment around, and that was the pivotal, again, no pun intended, but a pivotal moment in a theme or a concept. Now it's materials and materiality, the textural and the tactile quality of something that gives rise to something yet bigger, and maybe it's a repeat shape or something, or there's an element or a color on the interior that spins off and becomes this exuberant exterior, again, threading the continuity in color and texture and form from indoor to outdoor, not necessarily even mimicking the use and size of space. But the one thing that I think we need to all keep in mind, no matter what discipline that we're in, we need to continue to remind ourselves to be educated on the production and where these materials are coming from, how they're being produced. Are we raiding limited resources from some remote place or even on our own soil? And what's that exchange look like environmentally for the near time and for the long term? I used to grapple with that a lot more than I've remained conscious about, and shame on me, but I think we all have a social and a global responsibility to know these, besides the aesthetic and performative aspects, what are they dumping into our rivers and streams and leaving in their wake? So that I know that's kind of bigger and broader, but has to make it into our consciousness, and we have to be mindful about these things as well.
Dustin?
I think I remember the question.
I knew you were going to say that.
I mean, part of it is how we want to bring the indoors outdoors. And so we're pretty lucky with the teams that we're working with. So we generally know the interior designer and architect. We work with them quite a bit. And so once you have that team built, we all can play off of one another. And we're usually the last one hired, so we're usually kind of following suit and trying to catch up with the decisions that have been made for the interiors. And how do we take that feeling for especially the indoor kitchen, and take that to the outdoor kitchen and the outdoor living room and the outdoor dining? And really, you're right, like there's so much available to us with all the different vendors for cabinetry, for grills that don't have that stupid front face, that they're actually inlays, so we can keep these really clean lines and really build off of what's going on the inside. And the same thing with materials. It's like we get the chance to work with the designers and say, okay, I know you like this limestone, that's not going to hold up outside. Can we switch to something that looks almost identical, that has the performance that we can bring out, that won't get hot in the sun, that will stand up to whatever climate we're in. I mean, especially when we're working in Hawaii, like it's not only all of the UV and everything else, we have volcanic fog that is dropping acid onto the materials. So there, if we're using a limestone, it can etch 1/4 of an inch in a couple of years. So knowing what materials we can use there and then inform that for the interiors so we can have that seamless transition.
When it comes to finding the landscape architects to shrub it up, really? Is that what they say?
No.
I worked in a well-known architecture firm, and some of the senior architects would lean on us and say, we need you to shrub it up. And I said, so that's, or you're kind of the parsley around the pig. I said, that says a lot about your architecture. Yeah, so.
What is, Erik, what is the relationship between the indoors, outdoors now? Because what's interesting too is I would imagine between Beverly Hills and Scottsdale, the desire is the same. The values are the same, the people are the same. Many of them are the same people who moved from Beverly Hills to Scottsdale. It's got to be the same, but the climates are so different. How do you sort of balance that?
Well, for sure. I'll pivot it to the hospitality side. So, and by the way, the shrub it up is sort of like calling an interior designer a decorator. I mean, there's a definite difference, right? Interior designers and landscape architects, when you bring on the right team, we engage them right from the very start. So we never bring on landscape architects like we're a part of a team, and we create the indoor spaces and the outdoor spaces collaboratively together. So we just did the Biltmore Hotel in Phoenix, which was an original Frank Lloyd Wright design in the 20s and 30s. And it had, over the years, changed over to a big convention hotel. So the indoor spaces were not made anymore to handle 200 people flooding into it. And so our reaction to that, because it's a historic structure, was to bring it all outdoors. So we worked collaboratively with our landscape architect to create a whole outdoor bar that's created in a style that maybe Frank Lloyd Wright would have envisioned in this century, and create this magical wonderland that includes landscape material, patios, water features, and a huge exterior pavilion that's got all Ketra lighting to it. And our interior designer brought in all these beautiful materials. So now 200 people could leave a convention and go flood that space, and we could return the interior back to its historic space. So when you collaboratively work, like magic just comes out of that. And it couldn't have just come from me or a landscape architect together. We like all sat at the table and all brought sketch out, and magic happens at those moments. So that's the kind of thing that I really enjoy, because everybody brings something new to the table as far as, both on materiality from interior designers and landscape sort of visioning of how materials come together, and that's the fun in what we do as a team.
Scott, is that true for you too?
Yeah, we don't see any distinction between interior design, architecture, and landscape architecture. I think it's all one thing, and we insist that everybody be brought on board at the beginning of a project to work together, and I think that's the key to making a good project. And the kind of things that can happen are great. People are rethinking, I think, what an outdoor space. There was always this vision before: you have a yard and a pool and this and that, and now it's getting way more creative. So we're doing a house now in Dallas where there's a cenote that's been built right adjacent to the building. It drops down a level below to the basement, more or less, of the house. And then the water flows into the house at that point. And there's a room adjacent to that that's like a grotto you can go to. There's a waterfall that comes over the edge of this cenote. Everything merges into one. And you can create some fascinating stuff that way. It's not like a building and a landscape and an interior. It becomes all this amazing landscape. And you have clients now who seem to want to show that they have, I'm the only one that has this thing. So it's kind of a sales point. Right? We're actually doing a prosciutto room in one house right now. It's like, I think, you've had enough wine cellars and cheese calves and all this kind of stuff. So it's got a chain with a prosciutto and a knife. And so, people are wanting different kinds of spaces, and it requires all these trades to come together.
I have heard a lot of things. Never a prosciutto room.
Hopefully it'll be cool.
Sounds amazing. Sam, when you hear this, like the ideas and the concepts, What's talk to me a little bit about the design team, because the whole design process, right? And then you've got this relationship between your design team and the engineering team, the science guys and the look good guys, gals, people, folks, everyone. What's that relationship like? And then when you hear designers, once there's that acceptance that it's like, yeah, this product is amazing and it's performative and it does exactly what we want it to do. Now can you do this? And they start stretching your capabilities. How does that work internally?
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I would say that our product designers are very science-based. I mean, if you think about it, like our head of product design right now, it's interesting, he came from the flooring industry, but he spends a lot of time on the production line because, you know, one thing I haven't talked about that much, but our product is made largely of recycled plastic waste. So PE and PVC plastic. We're actually the largest PVC recycler in the US. So we'll do 600 million pounds of plastic this year that would have gone in the landfill that we grind up and put into these products. So that's a challenge. It's exciting to do all that, but so what they're looking at is how to maintain that sort of consumption of recycled material, but then there's a thin layer around it, a virgin material, and that's where all the magic happens. So the designers work very closely with the R&D people to make sure that the way that they're producing it looks as realistic as possible. So this guy can geek out on streaking, color cascading, texture, embossing patterns. I mean, they go deep on all this stuff. So it's definitely a pretty scientific kind of design, if you will, a very trial and error, constantly innovating and working. I think we're honestly, in the last few years, been much more, we always partnered with contractors and builders and our distributors and stuff. I think we're just now partnering much more with designers and architects to understand what they need, particularly around super high-end materials. Like we replace Ipe in a lot of outdoor applications, and I think our product looks really close to that. It probably got improvements. We know there's more we could do. We know there's more. And so working with people to get that feedback and try to constantly innovate on that is definitely where we're focused.
What are your clients, and Scott, I'll start with you on this one. What are your clients asking you for in the outdoor spaces, the manner in which they want to live? What are they asking you for now that maybe they weren't asking you for even 2 or 3 years ago?
Yeah, I think it's what I said. They want something different and unusual, and a lot of it also plays into this idea of security as well, because, you know, in terms of landscape, the perimeter fence becomes an important part of the whole design. And, you know, before it may have been there was no fence around it, or there was, you know, something thrown up later that just becomes part of it. I've seen too many homes in you know, slightly denser urban-ish areas where they do an all-glass box, you know, modern glass box, and then realize a few minutes later that, oh, I don't like people looking in and the delivery guy putting, so they end up building some sort of haphazard fence around it. It ruins the entire thing. So now we're starting to work in, you know, the fence design, the security aspects of the house, the views from it, from the house toward the street, and, you know, where your delivery people go. I think those are the biggest things, is actually shielding your privacy from the outside world, more or less. And I think that's a big change that's come about.
Erik?
Our clients want everything. That's the biggest problem. Like, they just want. I'll just use an example. We use their pergola structure, which is spectacular because it does do just about everything. It's weather resistant, it looks beautiful, but it offers this system where you could have complete rain protection, and then you could slightly open it and it becomes a trellis that lets some light in. Then you could completely retract it and be totally open to the stars. So we do a lot of golf clubs, private golf clubs, and after COVID, every golf club wanted to have this indoor-outdoor livability component where everybody's outdoors, but they don't want to always be in total, complete shade. They want some sun sometimes, and then they want at night total open to the outside. So to find a product like that that just does everything is just brilliant for us, because then we could integrate that. It doesn't even have to be on its own platform. We could put it into our roof structure and let that just be an integral component to how that patio experience is in our club. So great, another great innovation.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
You're getting a lot of promotion here
No.
today.
Well, I
I
was
didn't
jealous
know.
of him. I want to come work for you.
We are doing a lot of operable louver systems. I didn't know you guys made one. Sorry. But we get a lot of requests for that. A lot of our clients are asking, like, just for what they don't know. What don't we know to ask for? We have this long questionnaire that we're really trying to break them down. It's part psychology exam, which is actually a lot of fun, especially when they don't answer the same. But the biggest kind of outdoor program that we're doing that we haven't done before this year is outdoor theaters. So there's some systems that have retractable TVs that actually come out of the turf, so we can get around all of the planning hiccups that would keep us away from it, because if the cops come, they can just put it back in the ground. And also hidden speakers, so we're going like full Dolby outside. Granted, these properties have to be away from their neighbors for obvious reasons. So those are interesting. And then the other big change that we've seen over the last several years is we're not having to hide drought tolerance. So it used to be like we'd have a lot of clients, especially if they're coming from the East Coast, they want what they want, and they're going to ask for like the English laurel hedge, really water-intensive landscapes, and we used to just have to hide it from them. So we'd use like Laurus nobilis, does everything that English laurel does, but it doesn't use the water. Now we're having clients really adamant about it. So that's a lot. It's just nice not to have to hide it.
We've got a project that we're just about to get into the city, and it's gone through a lot of iterations. This is a repeat client for us, and she really has us push the limits. Our work tends to be very architectural when we have the opportunity. So the first concept was tunneling out of her basement at a level such that we would be able to take the swimming pool over and have the light coming down into the shaft of this tunnel, and it was going to, not in a cannabis way, it was going to be hydroponics. And seedlings and growing up, that I couldn't have been more excited about a program element like that. That went away, but then we found other uses, and we were looking at ADUs and building into the hillside and under the pool deck, and now that's turned into half Pilates room and half seedling growing room for the farm-to-table space up top, which is yet down another. This is a complex hillside property. One of the coolest things, though, and I'm not supposed to say too much about this client, but she is responsible for technology that is collecting soil samples from Mars. So you can imagine, she's involved with the project, and we're creating these really interesting individual pods and she's also very much a philanthropist. And so she would like to have, as a collective, these various pods, giving one away to each of her neighbors so that they can cultivate their gardens on this property, and they will be perhaps rotational, and because it's out in La Cañada, so it gets some real heat in the summers and some chills in the winters. So it will be responsive to sun angles and irrigation performance. She's playing with all these technologies, so that's fun. This is way different than anything we've done, but really talk about designing for a client. Yeah, I couldn't have dreamt this would happen in my lifetime, so in my career, so that's pretty cool.
That's insane. That's awesome.
Prosciutto?
I was gonna
Do
say
you have
outdoor
Mars
prosciutto
pods?
room. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Isn't yours an indoor-outdoor prosciutto room? No?
I'll do Hamana Iberico.
That being said, I want to sort of flip the script, do it from the other direction. What are some of the greatest challenges you have now? Because look, if you're inside, there are things that you can address directly. That now, we're talking about fire and fire ratings. We've covered that, but the fact that we've got irregular weather patterns, that sometimes there's drought, sometimes there's a deluge, and you just have more water than you know what to do with, which means now you also have to address drainage, whereas in certain areas, maybe you didn't really have to focus on it that much. Or the fact that, it's not the sun burns hotter, but there's, less UV protection, so things don't necessarily perform the way that they would have years ago. The fact that regulations, look, at least here in California, Title 24, in addition to the increased fire exposure, fire ratings, things that your palette has been limited. What are the headaches that you have now, and how do you address those? Specifically outdoors.
Yeah, the palette's an interesting thing. I said that, I felt like my favorite crayons were taken away with newer regulations, but we've worked around that, and it's actually more responsible designing, actually, as it turns out. I think water collection, I think that this county does a terrible job. I mean, we've got a concrete channel that feeds all the water to the ocean. Santa Monica has done a pretty good job in some respects. It's collecting water out of the golf course and trying to recycle. But we are throwing away so much water in the couple of years that we actually have our deluges. I don't know when we're going to see rain like that again. This may not be a wet year. We might not see it for another decade. And that's a shame. We've got very expensive systems for collecting rainwater on site, for which needs to be turned over in a certain amount of time. But if we already had our deluge, how much water's already in the ground? How much water do we need to use that we have to turn over for health reasons in a certain amount of time? It's not working. And so we need your scientists to help develop better technologies around that, and water capture through everywhere from the Central Coast on down to San Diego. And we've got a client, he said, I've got 3 acres, I've got my own well water, I can do anything I want. Well, until you poison the aquifer and until you tap out and there is no more water in your own personal well, I mean, it's to no end. We still have water issues, and we have to be mindful of that, at least here in Southern California.
It's always been about water. I mean, and such a big part of our degree has to do with water management and working with civil engineers on how to keep water on site, how to filter it, how to be responsible. In California, I mean, we have some of the strictest rules for treating water, so we're lucky that we don't have to fight our clients with that. It's because something we just have to do. And with the thing you're talking about, water capture, we've done that over the years, and I wish that it was more efficient. I mean, the problem is if you have that water sitting in a tank, it will start to grow, anything. And so you have to use it so quickly that we really don't get the benefits, and they're also incredibly expensive, so the clients don't see that ROI on it. And then, the other thing we were talking about was plant materials, and it's kind of selfish that we're kind of benefiting from this. We're not having plants eliminated. We're actually getting plants brought into some of our gardens. Like in Atherton, it used to be you couldn't use bougainvillea, you couldn't use tibucina, you couldn't use a lot of citrus, like especially limes. And I was in an interview, and my client's like, well, I want another lime tree. And I was like, you can't have it, it's going to freeze here. I look up, I'm standing underneath a 15-foot tree, looking like an idiot because obviously it will grow here. So yeah, it's kind of nice with global warming that we're actually getting a little bit of a benefit, but
We don't care about water. We get it before California and Las Vegas, so we just use it all up.
Great, thank you.
Our biggest challenge is really climate. It's so funny, our clients want to be outside like all the time, but they want it to be warm. They want it to be cold when they want it to be cold. So we're integrating heaters, misters, ceiling fans, like every type of way to keep the outdoor comfortable, even though they want to be out there and we can't. I mean, we've literally even pumped in forced air conditioning to an outdoor patio in Arizona because they want to be outside, but they still want to have the cold air. So that's really, when we're talking about doing outdoor spaces, still trying to keep the client comfortable is probably our biggest headache.
Scott?
Yeah, and we're going through a very weird transition time in Austin and a lot of other places where it's only in the past 4 or 5 years that the climate has changed dramatically, and what you can grow has dramatically changed. Like, you could be pretty much assured that you're not going to get a heavy, 2-week-long freeze in Austin. And so plant life, bamboo was everywhere, and potato vines were on all the buildings and everything. Well, you probably read about it where all the power went out and everything. We had 2-week-long freezes where the streets were solid ice. All those plants died. Plants that have been there 40 years, they're dead, gone. You can't replace, and then so people replanted, assuming it was a once in a lifetime kind of experience. The next year, same thing happened, And so now people are not sure what to do. And I think we're in this kind of weird transition phase of like, what plants will survive here? Because you have the opposite extreme. It's getting hotter in the summers, so you have plants that are burning and frying, and so it's really an odd time. I'm not sure where it'll end up.
Sam, isn't it interesting when you hear not sure what to do? That's an opportunity.
Sure. Yeah.
It's a huge opportunity if you can
make
figure.
plants.
Well, I was going to say that too. I was going to say, well, I don't think you're making plants, but talk to me about product development. You know, learning that you have pergolas. You have it.
Well, yes.
Right.
Yes.
How do you and the design? How does the design team look at brand extensions and new product lines, knowing what you're being asked to do? How do you approach that?
That's a good question. I think, you know, even just sitting here, it's really stimulating for me that we need to stay on our toes. It's changing really fast. And so hearing some of the new challenges and some of the new needs puts a lot of thoughts in my head about, you know, the kinds of things we need to do. We tend right now to be focused on more and more innovation to make it look more and more real, more and more like wood, new colors, because there's a lot of trends in just colors too. And textures, different widths, things like that. One of the big things that we just came out with this past year is an aluminum substructure. So the decking can be as a sustainable or long-lasting as you want, but if the structure underneath is made of wood and that needs to be replaced in 15 years, then your 50-year decking, you know, is going to look bad because the underneath is warbly. So this aluminum substructure is pretty incredible, not only for fire, but also for the longevity of your deck. So those are areas that we're innovating in to bring other aspects of what we do just to sort of, I don't know, bulletproof them even more. So that's an area. Structure is a company we acquired a few years ago, and they make incredible pergolas. So we're looking at partnering or acquiring other companies that do other things. We've spent a lot of time, I would say, probably the area that we've grown the most in the last couple of years is in railing, which is a whole nother area people don't think about. They plan their deck and they forget. It's like walking out and forgetting your jewelry and your outfit. Like, you know, you've got a cute outfit, but you got to figure out all the rest of the stuff. The railing is really what you see when you look out the window. It's the first thing that you see. It's a really big design element of the deck, both geographically, like, you know, on the East Coast you have one kind of look, on the West Coast you have another kind of look. If you have, it's all the questions you probably ask about how you want to interact with your view when you're sitting inside, all that. So there's been a lot more innovations around those kind of adjacent categories, I would say.
Yeah, and I imagine that we're gonna start seeing a lot more.
Yeah, for sure.
With that, and sadly, I know it flew by,
Time,
right?
it did fly by.
So listen, again, thank you all for coming out to this. And again, grab a card if you need one. Convo by Design. If you subscribe to the podcast, you will get this automatically to your feed in first quarter. Thank you, TimberTech.
Thank you, Josh.
For presenting this talk. I think it's important, and it was super fun. Thank you, Pacific Sales, for presenting the theater this year, and Julie Beuerlein for your incredible design. And again, thank you all for participating in this, because we can't have these important conversations if y'all don't participate. So I really appreciate the time. Thank you very much. And again, thank you guys for coming out.
Thanks for
so
coming.
Appreciate it. If you have any questions, we're going to stick